Every so often, a piece of media will rock an industry and capture the imaginations of people in such a way that it can only be described as a phenomenon. And in the world of anime, very few have reached such a status as quickly as My Hero Academia. Starting out as a manga about a world in which heroes become more than escapist fantasy, but a reality. And since it started in 2014, My Hero Academia has exploded in popularity to become a hit anime series with movies, video games, and even a musical. That's right, My Hero Academia is so big it went full Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I suggest you take a look at this hot mess. Wait in the Wings has a comprehensive look into this theatrical train wreck that had most people at the time just asking themselves, why? Why did you do this? But anyway, My Hero Academia is more than just another Shonen Jump story with amazing fight sequences and insane power-ups. It's an anime in which every element, from the art style, the music, and especially the characters, their motivations, and their relationships with each other that resonate with its audience in such a way that they become more than simply characters. In many ways, they feel human to us. Their journeys, struggles, and paths to become the hero they want to be allow us to connect with them in a way that most other anime only wish they could. And perhaps the character that captures this sense of connection and empathy with its characters the most is none other than his main character, Izuku Midoriya. From the beginning of My Hero Academia, we see not only the triumphs and victories, but also the blood, sweat, and tears that he went through in order to get those victories. And oh boy, were there tears. So many tears. Not that there's anything wrong with that. As a guidance counselor, I'm not judging the tears of anyone. It's a healthy way to express your emotions and there's no shame in it. I'm just making an observation. And of all the characteristics of our boy Deku, his bravery, his creative mind, his undying optimism, one aspect that's often overlooked is the transformation of his self-esteem from the first season to now. In his quest as the protégé of the #1 hero, we focus so much on his physical struggles that we forget to notice the emotional changes happening within our green-haired protagonist, and how those changes reflect who he is from the start to who he's become. I'm the guidance guy, and today we're going to take a dive into Midoriya's psychological makeup and look a little closer at where Deku started out, where he is now, and how he got there. And of course, as we go through this, be careful of them spoilers for My Hero Academia Seasons 1 through 4. We're going to start by looking at Deku as a character, who in many ways embodies the classic definition of a Shonen Jump protagonist. He's a virtuous, plucky underdog who wants to be the best like no one ever was, who has a unique ability that makes him super clutch. Yeah, we've seen all that before. We start to see a change in the narrative though, in the fact that he starts the story of My Hero as a powerless human in a world where the majority has at least some sort of super ability. The change is not in the fact that he's part of a powerless minority that puts him at a disadvantage. We see you there, Asta. But what is different though is how the world responds to his condition, and specifically, who. His classmates make fun of him and deride him for not having a quirk, and the #1 culprit of all of them is one Kacchan Bakugo, who trust, we're gonna get to him one day. We're so gonna get to that piece of work. And it gets even worse. The one man that Deku looks up to the most, All Might, even he tells him to just give up the dream and move on. But even at his lowest point, when the GOAT of all heroes told him that he was a lost cause, that didn't stop Midoriya, a quirkless kid, from trying to save his childhood friend from death. And it's through not any quirk that he had, but Izuku's superhuman willpower to help others no matter what the cost that got the attention of All Might and reminded him that anyone can be a hero. It was through that display that convinced All Might that this scrawny, nervous, quirkless fanboy was the right person to pass on his legacy to. And with All Might's tutelage, Midoriya gets accepted into the Harvard of Hero Schools, UA, and into the top class of the top course at the school as well. And it was this superhuman willpower that we've seen Deku accept and overcome every single trial thrown at him. Whether it's saving Kato from Muscular and the League of Villains, or stopping a fake bomb from going off in a class exercise. It doesn't matter how big or small the problem seems to be, Deku takes the plus ultra motto to heart and goes beyond his limitations, beyond his expectations to make miracles happen. So when we see Midoriya, we see a real stand-up guy, someone you can admire and hang out with. But now we come to the problem that brings us here today. The enemy that's bigger than Gentle Criminal, Shigaraki, or even All For One himself. Deku's self-esteem. Deku's struggle with self-esteem can be traced all the way back to the beginning of the series, and we quickly see how it shows based on how he presents himself in the first few times we see him. Now, like we said before, there's a lot to like about Midoriya. He's a kind-hearted, smart, selfless guy. But the problem with self-esteem is that it distorts our view of reality and puts everything in a negative tone, be it our interactions with other people, how we see other people, and ultimately, how we view ourselves. And this is clearly seen in the first episode of the anime. Let's take this scene for example. He's at his middle school with his classmates and his friend and number one douchebag, Bakugo. But just look at his body language here. He's slouching, he has his head down, he's trying his very best to be invisible. To him, this makes sense. No one can give you grief if you don't try to stand out, or even try to be seen in this case. But this attempt to hide fails as soon as someone brings up the fact that just like Bakugo, Izuku is applied to UA. Naturally, Bakugo goes ballistic, raging at the very fact that Midoriya had the gall to even attempt to try to go to the school that he wants to go to, as Bakugo sees this as a personal attack from someone he sees as beneath him. And as Bakugo lays it on Midoriya, again we see the signs of someone who doesn't have the highest levels of self-respect. He's allowing Bakugo to rail at him with only the slightest amount of resistance, practically whispering his retorts while Bakugo belittles him. This all culminates when Bakugo takes Deku's notebook, his homemade Wikipedia for every hero he knows, he goes and blows it up and tells Izuku that he should just go kill himself. Which, of course, is something that no human being should ever say to another person. Seriously, it took me 3 seasons to not hate this guy, but I'll never get the fans that like Bakugo from day one because of this scene right here. Yeah, he got better, but at this point in time anyway, this guy was nothing but a prick. And throughout all of this, what does Midoriya do? Nothing! He doesn't try to fight back or clap back or anything else. He just sits there and takes it. And you'll also notice that none of his classmates come to Deku's side or tries to stand up to Bakugo on his behalf. So here we are, we have the protagonist of our power fantasy escapist story, who's a shy, scared doormat of a human being? This is not how this is supposed to work. And it's certainly not how Izuku started out either. We saw him in the very first scene of this very episode standing up to the same rage beast as little boys. We see him there, standing between Bakugo and another kid, telling him to stop at the top of his lungs, even though he knows he doesn't stand a chance if Bakugo decides to throw down. So what happened to him? How did we get from brave little Deku standing up to the school bully despite the odds, to not even putting up any resistance? Well, as the case with a lot of mental health issues, this one started early in life, when Midoriya was a child. Because he wasn't always a nervous neurotic. We see in flashbacks that little Midoriya was just like any other kid his age. He was energetic, happy, and like everyone else wanted to be a hero, especially to be like All Might. That was his ambition from a very young age, but that dream was also crushed at a young age. When he was in kindergarten, his doctor gave him the news he thought he'd never hear, that he had no quirk. Such a revelation was a shock to his system, and as he got older, it made him stand out. Remember, 80% of the world's population had a quirk of some kind, and he had nothing to call his own. I mean, we can clown on some of Deku's UA classmates for having some really random quirks, like Rakido. Seriously? You gain superpower from sugar? That sounds pretty dangerous, cause Sugar Man can turn into Diabetes Man if he's not careful. And don't even get me started on Mineta. I'll never understand how that pervy dope managed to get into UA. You're telling me that he deserves to be in a school meant to groom the next generation of great heroes? Nuh-uh. Hard pass. But no matter how random some of these quirks are, the point is that they have them and can use them to protect other people. And that's the one thing Midoriya wanted to do more than anything. And he's not even clearing the first step. To the world, Izuku is a freak who failed the genetic lottery at best, and defective at worst, seemingly unable to contribute to the hero society that quirks have created. And though we aren't shown the total extent of Midoriya's childhood, what's clear is the impact of living a life as someone who stands out in the worst way possible. This ultimately means that Izuku lived most of his life not fitting in. In this world, everyone is expected to have a quirk, and Deku's situation quickly became a social downward spiral. If you don't meet the expectations of your peer group, you're not gonna fit in with said peer group. And we see that in the classroom scene. Midoriya is an outcast despite possibly knowing some of his classmates for years, and Bakugo sees him as weak and undeserving of the basic human dignity of respect. And even his mother, who always stayed by his side and supported him, even she didn't think that her own son could fulfill his own lifelong dream due to the simple fact that he was quirkless. In fact, he remembers the exact moment he knew that he was alone in this dream. That's crushing to just think about. Our mothers are supposed to be there for us, to give us that encouragement and to be the one person who believes in us when no one else does. And poor Midoriya didn't even have that. And when your own family doesn't have confidence in your ability, that's going to manifest in how you see yourself. For example, in the UA Sports Festival after his epic fight with Shoto in which he barely lost, he openly wondered if he was even the right person to inherit One for All. This is an example of all or nothing thinking, a mentality that sees you as either on top of the world and everything's going great, and thus you're great, or everything's gone to crap and you're nothing. And this is understandable. After all, Deku literally went from having nothing quirk-wise to having the greatest quirk of them all. It's easy for one to think that life is either chilling at the top of the mountain or dwelling in the valley, because that's all Izuku's ever known up until that point. We also see how generally nervous Deku is in the first season, barely able to make conversation with people, living in a perpetual state of fear of how to act, what to say, and basically how to human. But thankfully, this is not the end of Deku's story. Now before we move on, please take a moment to do the YouTube thing. You know what I'm talking about. Like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, and click on that bell so you'll know when the next video drops. I really appreciate it. Now let's continue. Throughout My Hero Academia, we see our green-haired protagonist grow and mature as both a hero in training and as a person. Whether it's passing the UA entrance exam, saving the school festival from gentle criminal, or taking on the League of Villains, we've seen a transformation in Deku. And though it's easy to explain it away and say, well, All Might gave him One for All and that caused him to change over time, and though it's true All Might's mentorship played a role in his development, we can't give Mr. Plus Ultra here all the credit. Because in the end, Deku had the ability to change his life within him all along. He just needed the right opportunities to see them be useful. The first ability he begins to utilize for his good is his critical thinking skills. Midoriya is quick to pick up on details and commits these particulars to memory even faster. We see this in the battle downtown in the first episode. He uses his notebook to keep track of the heroes he's seen, including their abilities and stats, but he also uses his mind to create observations about their limitations and advantages in combat. Then there's his first fight with Bakugo during the bomb exercise. Deku was able to take down a talented member of his class with advanced knowledge and experience with his quirk, while Deku was still trying to figure his own out. How did he do that? Because Deku knows Bakugo. He knows the ins and outs of his quirk, how he fights, and how to use that knowledge against him, while also proving to Bakugo that he was no longer the kid he knew from middle school, and that the nickname that Bakugo gave him earlier in life would now take on a new meaning.
ちゃんは大抵最初に右の大振りなんだ。どれだけ見てきたと思ってる。かっちゃん、僕は頑張れって感じのデクだ。
Yes, let him know, Deku. Let him know that you are not the same kid. That is definitely one of my top 5 favorite moments in this whole series. That moment right there. Right there. Izuku constantly sees the chessboard of a dangerous situation and is able to think of ways to turn the tables in battle, even if it puts him in bodily danger or just comes up with something straight up crazy like creating a human catapult to save his friend from the League of Villains. And with each successful application of his analytical mind, we see Midoriya become more confident in his approach to combat, even getting to the point where he's starting to think on the fly, something that he struggled to do earlier in the series. And as a result, we see him often take the lead in perilous situations, whereas earlier in the series, he may have been seen mumbling to himself in the corner somewhere. Another major part of Deku's inner transformation is his care and concern for others. From the jump, we see Deku's desire to help people, not to gain clout or build a brand, but because it's the right thing to do. And as basic as that might sound, the thought is almost revolutionary in the society of My Hero Academia. Because in this world, being a hero is comparable to being a pro athlete. You can get paid for your work, but also get endorsements, brand deals, be in commercials. You can become a celebrity by being able to save people from danger if you have the right combination of style and charisma. And with that celebrity culture that results from that approach to hero work, we see some heroes get distracted by the glitz and the glam or trying to be famous for fame's sake, as opposed to upholding the ideals of public service and self-sacrifice that All Might exemplified, and which was the very culture that Stain would rage against in Season 2. But with Deku, we get another perspective when he talks about his ambitions. Yes, he wants to one day become the #1 hero, but he's not in it for the money or the fame. He has this goal because he ultimately wants to be an inspiration in the same way All Might was to him as a kid, to help people with a smile and give them hope that no matter how bad things get, it would get better simply because he was there. It's why he wasn't upset when he didn't get a top shelf internship after the sports festival, and why he wasn't super upset after learning that after his victory over Stain, that no one would know about it because he engaged in that battle without a license. It's that pure-hearted desire to help people for the sake of helping them that excites Midoriya. Everything else is extra. And lastly, we come to what is possibly Deku's most powerful inner weapon, that superhuman willpower we talked about earlier, his determination. Like the many shonen main characters before him, determination is practically a requirement for these types of heroes, taking on insurmountable challenges in finding some way to blast through them. But with Deku, we see that determination become so a part of his being that one could argue that it's his never give up spirit that was his real quirk all along. Because remember, he's been told his entire life from everyone, including his idol, that his dream of becoming a hero was a waste of time without a quirk, with Bakugo going as far as saying his life was meaningless without one. But not once did that ever stop him. Even when he had no idea how his aspiration would play out, he never had a plan B. Not once did he pack it up or say, you know what, everyone's right, this is hopeless. And that right there is the core of My Hero Academia. Taking on life's challenges, no matter what they are or how big or small they seem, and determining that you will not be overcome by life's obstacles. It's about finding that drive and that desire that forces you to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And the thrill of going plus ultra, of surpassing your limits and deficits. And it's that thrill that Deku continues to experience time after time in this series. He's seen himself grow with each victory, not simply because he won, but how he won. And as he's notched up these victories, he starts to see himself in a different light. He starts to see himself as worthy of All Might's power. He starts to see himself as capable of bridging the gap between himself and his classmates who've had their quirks all their lives. That confidence has turned him into a leader, a strategist, and an inspiration to his classmates. And that's something we can do ourselves. No matter our circumstances or what we think of ourselves, we have our skills, our abilities, our quirks, if you will. We have our qualities that allow us to stand out and overcome the challenges that try to take us down in our lives. We all have the potential to go plus ultra, and it's when we see the positives within ourselves and have the determination to see our goals through that we can see what we're really capable of. All Might saw Deku's bravery long before he saw it in himself. In the same way, we may be blinded by our own twisted version of reality, and we may need other people to help us see what we already have. Nothing in Deku's life came easy. He's had to grind for everything he's earned. He's not like Shoto or Momo, who've gotten by on the recommendations of others or by their family name. He's not like Bakugo, who only recently learned that raw talent, no matter how much of it, will only get you so far. It was through his struggles that he stopped seeing his vices and started to see his virtues, which led to him going from a mumbling wreck to a never-quit hero who's learning to face danger with a smile. And it's through Deku's example that we, in our own way, can go plus ultra as well. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what other characters and franchises you'd like me to discuss next. This won't be the last time we'll talk about My Hero Academia, so if you want me to analyze another one of your favorite characters, let me know. And also don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you know when the next video is ready. Until next time.